I want to just talk this out in a way that I feel like it's not being talked about, that it could actually be productive. So let's talk student loan debt. I want to be transparent about my situation. When it comes to student loans, I've had very few student loans, and I did end up being delinquent on like a $2,000 student loan that I didn't know I had. Did a number on my credit. On the plus side, I did get that paid off eventually. It put me in my like mid-20s into like a real focus on building my credit and getting a good credit score. All that being said, I never had any real student loans. My grandfather, who had a 7th grade education, earned a few $1 million in the oil field, working his ass off, and made sure that I was the first person from my family to graduate college. And he made sure that I wasn't going to be in any kind of like financial hole. It's funny how being raised by my grandparents, who were boomers by every indicator, neither one of them had a real education, and how important it was to them for us to get an education was really astonishing to me. So I got my college paid for that way. That being said, I know and look at the student loan crisis, and I see the injustice that exists there. And we're going to break that down. One, about what I would have done differently, that would have probably led to more student loan forgiveness, to be honest with you, and what I feel is a more fair and just fashion and a more productive way of going about it as well. I want to just talk this out in a way that I feel like it's not being talked about, that it could actually be productive. So we're going into All Sides here. So what All Sides is it's a news outlet that puts kind of the headlines from the left, the right, and the center. It says Biden cancels $10,000 of student loan debts for borrowers earning under $125,000. Biden announced Wednesday that he would cancel up to $10,000 of federal student loan debt for borrowers making less than $125,000 a year. Biden has also extended a pause on student loan payments, which began in March of 2020 under former President Donald Trump, until the end of the year. Furthermore, those who receive need-based Pell Grants will see up to $20,000 of student debt canceled, and those with undergraduate loans will be able to cap monthly payments at 5% of their income, which is great. The move fulfills one of Biden's more controversial campaign pledges after months of internal White House debate over whether the move would spur inflation, which finally evened out in July. There has also been public debates over the fairness of student loan forgiveness, since most Americans either did not attend college or have already paid off their loans. A July poll found that 51% of Americans supported the $10,000 student debt cancellation. Coverage differed starkly between right and left outlets, with the right often emphasizing the move's impact on national debt, which they really don't actually care about that, only when Democrats do it. So from the right, this is the National Review. Biden, quote unquote, forgives massive amounts of student loan debt, transferring the cost to the public. President Joe Biden is set to forgive up to $10,000 in federal student loan debt for those making under $125K and $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients, transferring the cost of the loan to the American public. The White House announced Wednesday Biden's decision marks the first time a president has canceled federal student loan debt in such a broad capacity, and comes months before midterm elections. He had campaigned on canceling up to $10,000 per borrower during the presidential race, but there was no mention of an income gap. Okay, so that's what the right is saying. That's their headline there. Now let's going to look through that and see what we see. You're seeing this idea that it's transferred to the public. Now, what you're going to hear a lot, and Ted Cruz said this, that it's going to cost every American taxpayer $2,100 on average. So again, that's average. It's going to be more for higher earners and less for lower earners. Yes, and that's over 10 years. They don't like to say that it was $2,200 over 10 years. Ted Cruz is known for supporting wars, loves the military-industrial complex, is not afraid to spend your money. So I don't understand. We like to look at everything that Ted Cruz has voted for that we don't agree with, how much that's costing us over 10 years, and then throw that in his face. Would that make sense? Now, do two wrongs make a right? No. But hypocrisy is hypocrisy, and Ted Cruz is a hypocrite. And the fact that this fat is going to call baristas lazy?
That slacker barista who wasted 7 years in college studying completely useless things, now has loans and can't get a job. Joe Biden just gave you $20,000.
Disconnected and arrogant and disgusting. It's even hard to think that somebody would do that or say that. Now, I understand the criticisms of the policy, but don't attack the American people while then playing victim when your side gets attacked by a bunch of people that are equally as disgusting as you on the other side. F***ing absurd. You should be ashamed of yourself, Ted Cruz. That disgusts me so much. From the left, Biden cancels up to $10,000 in federal student loan debt for certain borrowers and up to $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients. Biden administration announced Wednesday that it will cancel up to $10,000 of student debt, blah, 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 blah. Couples who earn $250,000 a year or less file taxes jointly will also qualify for cancellation up to $10,000 per partner. So it's a pretty straightforward headline. This from NBC News. And then from the center, Biden cancels up to $10,000 in student debt, extends payment pause. So it's pretty straightforward here, right? There's nothing crazy. I think you're actually seeing less praise from the left than you would think. And when I say the left, I mean the mainstream Democratic Party. But you're seeing so much vitriol from the right. With this policy, you're admitting what we've all known. The student loan process is a scam. And you may not be admitting the fact that doesn't make it less true, that the federal government's involvement in higher education has done more harm than good. And I say that looking at this, right? I like the student debt forgiveness. Now, the way I would have done it is based on interest. Brianna Joy Gray brought up a good point. And this is how I feel. I feel the same way. Say my education costs $100,000. Now, if you have to take $100,000 in student loan debt to go to school, it may end up costing you $170,000. Over the next 20 years, you're paying that off. Brianna Joy Gray made this point about herself, who went to Harvard Law, right? And not all attorneys make a ton of money, but a lot do and can pay those off. For her wealthy classmates, it cost them $180,000 to go to law school because their parents paid $180,000 to Harvard Law, right? Which has a endowment of billions of dollars, by the way. It cost her $240,000 to go to Harvard Law School as a working class woman because of the interest rates. So again, we're looking at the scam within the scam here. So they've bloated what's necessary to graduate with a bunch of stuff that is beyond unusable, right? You don't need racquetball courses in college, guys. You don't need PE. A bachelor's degree should take you 2 years. Why do you need a summer break in college, dude? The best thing you can do in college is to take summer courses. They're way shorter and way faster, and you knock them out. I took the hardest courses in summer because I would be in there every day for 3 hours. A bachelor's degree should take 2 years and should not require physical education courses. Who gives a f? LSU doesn't need a lazy river, right? I went to Texas State, and for whatever reason, there was a pissing contest between Texas State, A&M, UT, Texas Tech over who had the tallest rock climbing wall. Now, while I think that colleges should have a pool to swim in, a good gym, things like that, basic things, but they've gotten absurd. It's become a playground. It's become an amusement park. You should have a college that's focused on education. Now, if businesses want to crop up around that, there's a market need for other gyms and other things. I don't know, other things that students want to do, coffee shops. That's great. Let the local economy take care of that. It's not the responsibility of the university, but it's become that way because the administration has gotten bloated. I mean, there's diversity and inclusion heads of colleges that are making over $300,000 a year. Why the tuition go to that? I'm pro forgiveness, but it needed to be paired with reform. And Saga brought this up as well. If you cancel $10,000, the amount of outstanding debt will return to the same levels in 4 years. It's actually 5 years. You haven't reformed anything. You've admitted that the system is a scam, but you haven't reformed anything. I am all about loan forgiveness, like I said. Now, what I would have done here, because I brought up the example, if you have $100,000 to go to school, but it ends up costing you $170,000, I feel like that's cost prohibitive, and I think that the incentives for the universities gets all the incentives for the lenders get all I think the way you go about student debt forgiveness is do it based on interest rates. Forgive the interest accrued and cap the interest rate at 1.5. Maybe you forgive the amount of interest accrued on the principal, the difference between what your interest rate was and 1.5%. And you cap student loan interest rates at 1.5%. With that changes the incentive for lending. And you also allow people to declare bankruptcy from student debt. And that's a funny thing too. You cannot declare bankruptcy from student debt. So that means that people that take out these loans are held completely accountable to them, unlike any other loan that exists. And the banks have zero risk, which changes the incentive for the banks completely. So if you look at this and you say, hey, we're going to change the incentive structure here. You can declare bankruptcy from student loan debt. We're going to forgive the interest that's accrued on the principal over time. We're going to cap the interest at 1.5. So now if somebody's had a loan forever, right, for a long time, and they're sucked underneath it, the people that really need the forgiveness are going to get the most. If they've been paying this out forever and they're still stuck with $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and they're only paying interest because they don't have any money. These are people that really need help. They're going to get the biggest piece of the forgiveness. If someone's 22 and just out of college and doing their thing, and they've only accrued maybe $500, $600, $700 of interest, well, they would get that forgiven. They get their interest rates capped, and we can go on from there. And if somebody's really in trouble and they've gotten themselves in deep shit, they can declare bankruptcy. These are all things that could have been done that then also change the incentive structure for the lenders, for the colleges, and we start to see things change a little bit now. It's like, oh, well, now we have to have a different conversation about what we charge for classes, what kind of administration bloat there is. Maybe somebody's going to offer the credits needed to get a bachelor's degree in 2 years if you go through the summer. That undermines the current system that exists within our corrupt university cabal. It may put a little bit more focus on local colleges getting a little bit more funding, a little bit more donations, right? Everybody wants to donate to Harvard, Yale, and all these other places, where if you were going to make a $100,000 or $1 million donation to a small college, that's actually going to go way further. It's not going to go into their hedge fund. So when you turn colleges into hedge funds and you change the incentives to the structure we have, you get into a really shitty place. And that's where we're at now. And now Bernie Sanders wanted to forgive all student loan debt and then cap it going forward at 1.8%. Would that have gotten through? No. But that cap at 1.5, 1.8, under 2%, I think is a really good idea. But the government also has to take responsibility for the fact that they've made college exponentially more expensive. And we don't have dialogue and debate over this issue. Now, what I thought was interesting over this, even though I think this is generally a good idea, and here's why I think it's a good idea. I'm going to steel man the debt forgiveness. One, first of all, it's the biggest move we've seen when it comes to student debt. No one has done anything when it comes to student debt at all. We've talked about it for a while, but no one's done anything. Just like legalization of marijuana, everybody wants to get the votes associated with that very popular policy, just like healthcare reform, but nobody wants to actually do anything about it. College, that's the same thing. So what we've seen now, and this is a good thing for everybody, we've seen somebody make a move. Right now, will it get struck down by the Supreme Court? Possibly. But we've seen somebody make a move, attempt to make a move on student debt. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, everybody who disagrees with this move has new ideas about what we can do about student debt. All of a sudden, the conservatives are just pulling ideas out of their ass about what they can do about student debt. So now we have a little bit of pressure on both sides of political parties, or both political parties that have us by the balls. A little bit of pressure applied on them to do something here. So that's good, right? Now, if this does go through and this debt gets knocked out, well, people have been paying they're $200, $300 a month into their debt. It's not moving very fast. And all of a sudden, say you had $8,000, $9,000 in college debt, it's gone. Okay. Well, now you've got a little bit more flexibility, right? Now you can take on something. If you're making those payments, now you're willing to ready to, now I know things have been paused for a long time, but if you've got the means to make those payments at that 3 or 4, now you have a little bit more money to spend, right? Maybe that means that's the difference in you being able to put a down payment on a house and not. Maybe that means you can get a more fuel efficient car and save yourself a little bit of money in the long term. And that also supports the economy in certain ways. So there is a stimulus associated with this as well. You're seeing this criticism a lot as well too. Does it disproportionately affect the white collar crowd? Yeah, probably does. Now, that being said, I think a lot of people that have college degrees that didn't really work out and weren't as valuable. And I don't mean just like liberal studies, whatever degrees, like the ones you're going to bring up, but like a lot of times a degree just doesn't mean anything. And you end up working retail or as a barista and, you got sold a false bill of goods. And we have to also acknowledge that many times college is sold as a false bill of goods and they do not deliver on what they promised. It seems like a fraud, and it seems like a lot of this is just like people who are caught up in a fraud are getting a little bit of help for most people, for a lot of people. Now, depending on what you want to do with your degree, it can be different. This could do some good for the economy as far as people being able to making that little difference between being able to put a down payment on a home or maybe even relocate to a different state. Like there's all kinds of things that little bit of freedom can actually help. But again, I would have liked to have seen it means tested by who's paid the most interest as opposed to a flat $10,000. And it would have been paired with massive reform. And to bring it back around to working class folks being, that didn't go to college or have already paid off their debt, being kind of ostracized by this, I think you have to also pair this with some kind of trade school reform as well. I think if you have student loan debt for this, and if you had to take out loans to go to trade school, there's a million other ways where like people are doing something that are actually adding value to our society that also need to be noticed and appreciated within this student loan conversation as well, that didn't go to college, but maybe got an education elsewhere and maybe accrued some debt through that. Maybe there's something there. Now, is it as clean and simple? No, of course not. But if it's trade schools, that is, right? If you have clear trade school debt and you just got out of trade school, hey, forgive 10,000 of that too. And maybe make a policy going forward where if you graduate from trade school, you get some debt forgiveness. Now, the problem with all of that is like, well, now you're going to see tuition go even higher. And it's the same thing I said about the EV tax credit. And what do you know, right? You get a $7,500 EV tax credit and then the price of electric vehicles just goes up $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. And I think you're going to see the same thing. It's like, well, people are going to go to college. Like, well, it's probably going to get forgiven. So I might as well just go spend away. They got big, and that provides perverse incentives. So now you have perverse incentives on the consumer side and the university side. There's so much here. But again, I wanted to just talk through this because I've been thinking about it a lot, and we're not seeing quality dialogue and debate. There's valid points on both sides. You can land on whichever side you want. I totally get that. But we have to understand that we're dealing with an industry. You're forgiving debt that was paid to an industry that has very perverse incentives. And I think that is the foundation we need to focus on. So just like Sagar said, I'm 100% in alignment with him on this. I don't like this not paired with something. Now, that being said, if there would have been legislation passed that would have helped out American people, would have reformed the college system, would have done all these things, it would have been presented in Congress and gone through the process, Republicans would not have voted for it and would not have given Democrats a win. So before you listen to whatever is Jim Jordan, Ted Cruz, whoever the else, right? Understand that they would not have done a goddamn thing to help you or me or anybody else or reform the college education system. They would not do a single thing, no matter how good it is for the American people and our society, our culture going forward. They would not have done anything that would have given the Democrats a win. So their criticism of this means so little to me. A lot of criticism coming, but you would not have voted for reform if it would have come to a vote, because you would not give the Democrats a win, because if before anything else, it's about your team, it's about partisanship, and it's sure as for either one of these political parties is not about the American people. It's about votes. I want to share with you what it takes to create this kind of content. I have to sift through piles and piles of bullshit from political ideologues that are completely ridiculous and try and find the truth. I've got to go from the left to the right to the center, all over the place. It's exhausting. I'm losing my fucking mind. But one thing you can do to help me out and help my mental health is subscribe to this channel. Turn on post notifications, like this video, leave a comment, just something, please. I'm losing my shit and you're the only one that can help me. Subscribe to the channel.